New tonight on Our News Live at 7, a method to the movement. As reporters press for answers on the Shanty town demolitions, the press secretary promises a methodical approach. But first,
government signing a heads of agreement today for a $56 million resort development in the Exuma Keys. Those details straight ahead on Our News.
More trouble brewing inside the opposition Free National Movement Party as controversial Vice Chair Johnson comes out against the current leader. We'll tell you what he has to say. And then in Our News at 7:30, a call to action. A senator says it's time for an NIB rate increase as the mid-year budget now moves to the upper chamber. Our News Live at 7 starts now. Welcome to Our News Live at 7. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Kendino Knowles. The Davis administration inking a $56 million heads of agreement for a new state-of-the-art resort development on Exuma. Jamila Mizik was there for the signing and gets us started tonight.
It is a 36-acre development on Elizabeth Island in the Exumas, and according to Prime Minister Philip Davis, Exuma, Bahamas will have the lowest environmental impact of any development in the Caribbean.
Exuma, Bahamas, powered by Silent Resorts, will be the Bahamas' first fully sustainable, zero-carbon, solar-powered residence and yacht resort community.
Davis adding that the resort will be a welcome addition to the economy, creating long-term sustainable employment for many Bahamians.
The construction phase of the project is projected to employ between 40 to 50 Bahamians, and the resort will employ 75 permanent staff once it opens. I must commend the developers, Silent Resorts, who have pledged not only to maintain and protect the serene beauty of the island, but are also committed to donating a portion of each sale to Silent Catch, a local non-profit organization that supports sustainable fishing, reef restoration, and mangrove preservation.
The project will include 28 4- to 6-bedroom private villas on the island, and president of the development, John Long, says work will start within the next month or two. An early opening is planned before the end of the year.
We're very light touch. We're not putting in big foundations or pouring lots of concrete on the island. Everything is pier and beam up above the bluffs. We're protecting the bluffs, we're protecting the environment. The most important aspect is of the entire island, we're only developing 16% of it.
Tourism and Investment Minister and Member of Parliament for Exuma and Ragged Islands, Chester Cooper, also on hand for the signing. He's calling it a great day for Exuma.
And certainly the addition of this eco-friendly, ultra-sustainable resort as a part of the product in Exuma and a part of the product of Elizabeth Harbor works wonders for the Exumas, works wonders for tourism, and we are delighted to be able to welcome you.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Jamila Mizik.
All right, thanks, Jamila. And questions over the demolition of shanty towns still remains as Bahamians are calling for stronger enforcement of the country's immigration laws. Press Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, Clint Watson, reiterating government is moving methodically to address the issue.
Efforts, however, have been engaged to identify documented residents in shanty towns. Documented residents. Now, once you've identified those documented residents in shanty towns, we will be able to identify their employers, who obviously they have work permits for. The employers will be made to live up to their living obligations for their employer who is on work permit. If they do not live up to those obligations, the work permits will be revoked and the individuals repatriated. That's for documented.
Now, as for those who may be undocumented, the press secretary said this.
They will be processed for repatriation. And then to the third category, which are Bahamians who are living in these communities, the government will assist in finding relocation places for those Bahamians that are living there. Those are the three categories that you'll find in shanty towns. So there's a methodic plan that is in place that is now dealing with this to identify that before the demolition process can take place. And that's what's going on right now as we speak.
Well, 3 men are behind bars, facing charges of attempted robbery at Superwash last week. Prosecutors say Keon Williams, Marlon Smith, and Jamal Taylor tried to rob the Carmichael Road West laundromat on March 3rd. They are also accused of possessing a Taurus GTC 9mm pistol, along with 5 rounds of ammunition. Police say 2 men entered the Coin laundromat around 1 p.m. when one of them allegedly pointed a gun at the cashier and demanded cash. She was able to escape and locked herself inside an office, foiling the robbery bid. The men left empty-handed and were arrested following a brief chase. The suspects were not required to enter pleas to the charges in the case, now before Magistrate Algernon Allen Jr. Bail was denied. They're expected back in court on May 2nd. And police are investigating an early morning armed robbery. They say the victim was dropping a family member home when he was accosted by a gunman who was dressed in dark clothing and wearing a black mask. The suspect reportedly hit the victim in the face and robbed him of a cell phone before running from the area. Police are now searching for that suspect. Free National Movement Vice Chairman Richard Johnson says he doesn't support the current leadership of the Free National Movement amid an ongoing matter in the Supreme Court. Johnson previously stated his unwavering support for former party leader and former Prime Minister Dr. Hubert Minnis. Recently, Dr. Minnis acknowledged Michael Pintard as the party's leader, adding that he respects the leadership.
Currently, at this time, we have UBR matters in court, and so it's very difficult to say that, to see as to where this matter has gotten us. And so currently, at this time, to say that, I won't be telling the truth publicly.
That you are in support of the Free National?
That I am in support of the leadership of the Free National Movement this time, given the fact of what we're going through now.
On Wednesday, a Supreme Court justice handed down an order restraining the Free National Movement from barring Johnson from council and association meetings. The matter was taken to court after an emergency council meeting was called where members voted to bar Johnson from attending future meetings. A writ filed in the Supreme Court revealed that Johnson wants his rights to be reinstated, $250,000 in damages for loss and unlawful interference of his membership, and another $250,000 for mental distress, among other things.
Absolutely. I have to carry out the mandate that was asked by the delegates who voted for me last year, February. That's what I'm doing. In fact, I was always on the front line. I will continue to be on the front line to hold this government accountable and to ensure that the Free National Movement the banner and our message is carried out.
All right, we've got much more to get to in a moment, but for now, it's time for your first look at temperatures. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is standing by in the Weather Center. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Kinnear, and a happy Thursday evening, everybody. After a breezy day around the islands, temperatures managed to get down into the low 70s right now. We had 72 degrees outside our studios, partly cloudy skies. Your winds are out of the northeast, and those winds have come down to 9 miles per hour, and your field slight temperature is also in the low 70s. Temperatures around the islands tonight, it is 70 in Grand Bahama, Freeport, 72 in Marsh Harbor, 74 over in Alistown, Bimini. We pick up 73s in Great Harbor Key in the Berry Islands, also in Governor's Harbour, Lucera, 72 in Nicholstown and Ross. Also, as I said, here in the capital. Central Bahamas, 74. Kemps Bay, 73 in Arthurstown, Cat Island. Pair of 75s in Georgetown, Exuma, Deadman's Key, Long Island, 75 there as well. 71 in Cobenton, San Salvador. Into the southeast Bahamas, a little warmer there. 76, Duncantown, Ragged Island. 75s popping up in Colonel Hill, Cricket Island, Delectable Bay, that's in Acklands, Abrahams Bay, Maguana, as well as Turks and Caicos Islands. Deep south, Inagua, you guys are the warm spot, and your temperature at this hour is at 77. Satellite view, patchy clouds moving in off the Atlantic. That's all courtesy of a big low pressure system that's sitting out there, and the combination of a high pressure system that's going to continue to keep us with that northeast to easterly flow throughout the rest of the night. But we expect the winds to become light and variable tonight, later on, and then picking up, becoming east to southeast tomorrow. But swells out there in the open Atlantic will continue to affect the island, so beaching and boating will become hazardous over the next couple of days. That's a quick look at weather. Stick with us. Look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Thanks, Greg. And still to come on our news, no time to let your guard down. Regional health officials warn to keep up the surveillance for COVID. And no letting up. A former AG speaks to the ongoing barriers to gender equality at local observances for International Women's Day. And Later in World News, a written apology from a Mexican cartel over the slaying of 2 Americans abducted in a group of 4. That's coming up when Our News continues.
Home of the 50th Carifta Games.
This segment of the news is brought to you by H.G. Christie. List your home in Grand Bahama with H.G. Christie. Visit our new office in the Port Lakaya Marketplace. H.G. Christie, celebrating over 100 years of service.
There are no plans for a U.S. pre-clearance section to return to Grand Bahama. That confirmation coming from United States Charge d'Affaires Yusha Pitts in an exclusive interview with our Talia Hall. You may remember that U.S. pre-clearance was part of the island's main airport for decades, but closed following Hurricane Dorian. Pitts explaining why there are no current plans for its return.
There's only 2 things that Bahamians ask me for. They say, will you please send us a U.S. ambassador, and will you please reopen a CBP pre-clearance in Grand Bahama? So I appreciate that this is an important issue to Bahamians, but there's, of course, other issues too. There are budgetary issues. There are just sort of like the quantities of people coming through here are just not high enough yet to make a business case for CBP pre-clearance.
She says it's hard to see the island as it's still facing so many hurdles 3 years after Hurricane Dorian, but confirmed that the U.S. still works closely with the Royal Bahamas Police Force, Northern Division. Our Talia Hall will have more on this coming up in Our News at 7:30. A top Pan American Health Organization official asking all member states to continue surveillance of COVID-19 cases despite decreasing cases across the region. That message from PAHO Director of Health Emergencies, Dr. Ciro Ugarte, who was asked, that is, how PAHO keeps tabs on the accuracy of information provided by countries in this region.
Most of the countries in the Americas and the world are seeing fewer cases of COVID-19, and enhanced surveillance is being progressively shifted to integrating COVID-19 into regular respiratory virus disease and outbreak surveillance. That is the way to proceed. And as Dr. Jarvas indicated, the region and the world still need to maintain a timely and appropriate information of the COVID-19 trends and the virus.
Now, here in the Bahamas, COVID dashboards were launched in 2020 to keep residents up to date on the state of COVID cases in the Bahamas. Last December, the Ministry of Health and Wellness announced it would no longer publish those weekly dashboards. Instead, the COVID-19 report will be merged with the Bahamas COVID-19 vaccination tracker to form one report to be published a week after the end of each month. Dr. Ugarte says keeping informed is key.
PAHO is closely coordinating with our member states on strengthening the regional genomic surveillance capacity So we closely coordinate with each of the member states and regularly interact also with the national authorities.
Former Attorney General Allison Maynard Gibson is keeping the heat on the issue of gender inequality when it comes to citizenship rights in the Bahamas just before an International Women's Day roundtable hosted by the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. Maynard Gibson had this to say when asked about the current situation surrounding legislation.
I believe that it is extremely important for us as citizens to appreciate that this issue impacts each of us in our everyday lives. We all have family members who are impacted in some way or another by this.
When our news comes back from the break, we turn our spotlight to stories making headlines across the world as gang violence forces the temporary closure of a Doctors Without Borders hospital in Port-au-Prince. And on this day in history, we revisit the 2012 Southern Air charter crash landing at Deadman's Key Airport in Long Island. And later in our Sustainability First report, a company founded in Costa Rica has found an innovative way to keep plastics out of the landfill and into buildings. The details when our news returns. This is our news. Welcome back. We turn our attention now to stories making headlines across the world. Someone claiming to be the Mexican drug cartel allegedly responsible for the abduction of 4 Americans and the killing of 2 of them has condemned the violence and purportedly turned over its own members who were involved to authorities. In a letter obtained by the Associated Press, the Scorpions faction of the Gulf cartel allegedly responsible, as we said, they apologized to the Mexican woman as well as residents of Matamoros. The Mexican woman, as we said, she died in the shooting, and the 4 Americans and their families. State officials did not immediately publicly confirm having new suspects in custody. A separate state security official said that 5 men had been found tied up inside one of the vehicles that authorities had been searching for, along with the letter. Leaders of U.S. intelligence agencies say China is deepening its cooperation with Russia to try challenge the United States despite international condemnation of the invasion in Ukraine. In a recent hearing, they identified the Beijing government as the principal threat to the U.S. around the world. The hearing coincided with the release of the intelligence agency's annual global threat assessment.
Perhaps needless to say, the People's Republic of China, which is increasingly challenging the United States economically, technologically, politically, and militarily around the world, remains our unparalleled priority. Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, under President Xi Jinping, will continue efforts to achieve Xi's vision of making China the preeminent power in East Asia and a major power on the world stage. To fulfill Xi's vision, however, the CCP is increasingly convinced that it can only do so at the expense of U.S. power and influence.
2 people are dead following a foiled multi-million-dollar heist at Chile's largest airport Wednesday morning, highlighting concerns of rising crime in the Andean nation. Footage widely shared on social media shows a shootout between robbers and officials at the Arturo Merino Benitez International Airport in Santiago. Authorities said 1 robber and an airport security official died during the attempted robbery. The plane, which had arrived from Miami, was carrying $32.5 million to be transported locally by security provider Brinks. And a new education curriculum leading to violence between police and protesters in Bolivia. During a teacher protest against the move by the Ministry of Education, police fired pellets at teachers who in turn threw explosives and objects at them. According to local media, 2 protesters were detained by police for carrying explosives. And gang violence in Haiti's capital has reportedly forced the temporary closure of a Doctors Without Borders hospital in Port-au-Prince. The charity said that patients and staff at its facility in the Cité Soleil district had been put at risk and that Haitians looking for treatment had become collateral victims of warfare just meters from the hospital. Haitian Prime Minister Ariel Henry continues calls for international force to help fight criminal gangs. And finally, more than 200 illegal migrants were intercepted in the Turks and Caicos Islands on Wednesday afternoon after the Royal TCI police force said they received reports of a suspicious vessel making its way towards West Caicos. Police say Marine Branch officers intercepted the vessel about 3.5 miles southwest of the Bluff Providenciales. Among the group, 40 females and 162 males, including 4 minors. Well, some plastics are harder to recycle than others. A company that's founded in Costa Rica has developed a process, though, to keep plastics out of the landfill and into buildings. Christina Dragovich has tonight's Sustainability First report.
Bahama's first, putting sustainability first for our people and our environment. What's first for you and the planet comes first for us.
Billions of tons of plastic end up in landfills as plastic waste, a global problem with far-reaching impact. You don't have to walk far along our coastlines before bumping into plastic waste. The plastic problem lit a spark in Donald Thompson, who founded the Center for Regenerative Design and Collaboration in Costa Rica in 2018.
I'm concerned. We'd watch the amount of plastic increase every year, year on year on year, and it just became very apparent that somebody had to put a big effort into figuring out what you could do with that in volume.
Thompson is a developer and builder who, along with his wife, started a small classical music school in Costa Rica for underprivileged children. Cleaning up the beach was a part of that program.
Let's take on this challenge to make a global difference. How can we really turn the tide on this plastic waste problem?
CRDC has patented the process of turning plastic waste, resins 1 through 7, into a construction aggregate called resin 8, which can be used to construct buildings or asphalt roads.
Utilize what's called industrial symbiosis to take what we could take out of the plastic industry, all of that plastic that no one really could or wanted to recycle, but transform it. That would be the big word. Regenerate it or transform it into something that proved to have greater value in its second life.
The Costa Rica plant is processing up to 90 tons of unwanted plastic waste daily to make the building blocks of construction, a mission that not only helps to chip away at plastic waste globally, but through partnerships with organizations such as Habitat for Humanity, helps to alleviate the housing crisis. Tune in to Our News, the weekend edition, to learn more about how CRDC is expanding its impact on the global plastics problem. Reporting for Our News, I'm Christina Dragovich.
Still to come in Our News, today in history, find out interesting facts about the day that was March 9th. Plus, Greg is back with your extended weather forecast. And then in Our News at 7:30, find out why there are no plans on the table for the return of U.S. pre-clearance in Grand Bahama. It's a story you will only see right here. That's coming up when Our News returns. Welcome back to Our News. It's time now to turn our spotlight on events that shaped the day that was March 9th, including the inaugural voyage of the world's largest ship. Take a look. This day in Bahamian history, in 1912, Francis Edward Bruce was born. Bruce was a British lawyer, judge, diplomat, and administrator, and was the last governor and commander-in-chief of the colony of the Bahama Islands. He was also the first governor when the colony's new constitution came into effect on May 10, 1969. The Bahamas Historical Society notes he was the last surviving governor when he died on March 24, 2013. On March 9, 2012, a Southern Air charter made a crash landing shortly after 2 p.m. at the Deadman's Key Airport in Long Island.
Officials tell our news team the Beechcraft 100 was making its descent into the Deadman's Key Airport when the landing gear failed. Before investigators arrived on the scene, the landing gear could be seen strewn across the last 200 yards of the runway. Royal Bahamas Defense Force officers say the pilot appeared to have made a controlled landing, coming to a stop in bushes about 60 feet to the right of the actual runway. Passengers' belongings could still be seen on the interior. The pilot remained with the aircraft for some 45 minutes after the crash. He appeared too shaken up to speak with our news team, but was seen removing his belongings from the aircraft before being escorted to the local clinic for an examination.
Very scary. We came into Deadman's Key and the next thing the plane hit the ground really hard, wheels flying, and the plane ended up to the bush.
Then in 2016, an American man treated at the Princess Margaret Hospital appeared in a Fox News interview sharing a horror story of his experience, claiming he had a botched surgery after having his appendix removed. At the time, Dr. Dwayne Sands branded the account inaccurate.
When you see this type of damning, accusatory allegations that seek to destroy the reputations not only of the individuals but of the institution, I am offended.
And finally, on this day in 2022, with a capacity of 7,000 passengers, the world's largest cruise ship, the Royal Caribbean Wonder of the Seas, docked at the port of Nassau in its inaugural voyage. It was the 5th ship in the Oasis class to come to the Bahamas. All right, to watch that historical recap again and for all of today's top stories, you can visit ournews.bs. It's going to do it for us in News at 7. Joining us now is Italia Hall with the latest headlines. Italia?
Yes, Ken, thanks so much. While senators tackling the financial viability of the Social Security Fund and the tough call on a rate increase and why a former AG says equality can't wait. Tonight on Our News Live at 7:30, an opposition senator presses the government to make a decision on the NIB rate hike. We've got the latest on the mid-year budget debate now before the Senate. And not so fast, details of the renegotiated deal with Royal Caribbean for the proposed development on Paradise Island. Plus, parents react outside of an Abaco school after an incident on the campus. A Ministry of Education official goes on the record as Our News tries to get answers. And later, former Attorney General reigniting a hot-button issue at an International Women's Day roundtable at the University of the Bahamas last night. Our News Live at 7:30 starts in a moment.
Hey, Queen. Hey, Queen. Hey, Queen. Sister.
Girl, you've done it again.
You are constantly raising the bar for all of us and doing so flawlessly.
You do know that you're that girl, right?
I hope that when you wake up in the morning and look in the mirror, you see how divine you are.
Know that so many people want what you got.
You have dreams to fulfill and promises to yourself that you must keep.
I know at times you feel underappreciated and misvalued.
Trust me, we've all been there.
So it's necessary that you can count on yourself.
So don't go seeking perfection.
Extend yourself a little grace.
Don't be afraid to celebrate the little wins as much as the big ones.
You, Miss Thing, are courageous. You are dynamic. You are principled.
So, baby girl, remember, respect is a minimum.
There's a sweet justice in knowing that the path you're on was designed for you and you alone.
Doing right by yourself never goes out of style.
Everything about you is majestic and a force to be reckoned with.
Trust me, people are paying attention.
You are special and worthy of praise. Don't shy away from it.
You don't have to get your groove back, because guess what? You never lost it.
It's important to rest. Make sure your hustle doesn't get in the way of your health.
Girl, take care of yourself.
And the next time you want to second guess yourself, don't do it.
So pause for a second right now.
Relax, relate, and release.
You are needed. You are appreciated.
Girl, you make me so proud. And I love you.
Remember,
you are 100%
that queen.
Oh, yes.
Coming up tonight on The Record, we've always taken for granted that when we go to the food store, we'll find what we want. But among the many COVID lessons learned, the need for better food security.
For the government and the Davis administration, we've put a lot of funding into agriculture, into food security, and finding creative ways to do that. You know, for us, we've made a commitment with CARICOM that we're going to do what we can to reduce imports 25% by the year 2025.
That's tonight at 8, right here on The Record on cable channel 212 and streaming live on the Our News Bahamas Facebook page.
Welcome to our news and thank you for joining us. I'm Natalia Hall. Debate on the mid-year budget moving steadily through the Senate with a spotlight on the National Insurance Fund. Leader of the opposition business in the Senate, Darren Henfield, says government needs to move immediately to make changes to the NIB rate to prevent the fund from depleting. His comments today follow those of State Minister responsible, Miles Rhoda, who painted a grim picture in the House of Assembly this week on the future of the NIB fund.
I believe the government needs to immediately move post-haste to make some course corrections with NIB. This ain't take no rocket science. You have to increase the rate. And it's unpopular to do because when you govern from a position of populism, it's difficult for you to make hard decisions. But there's some things you just got to do. And if you see what happened in this country in the last 20 years, you might as well make the decision.
Loroda recently said the fund cannot continue to be kicked down the road, adding that NIB is projected to lose around $98 million without a rate increase. He said government has made a decision on the NIB rate hike, but he didn't say what that position is. While contributing to the mid-year budget debate in the Senate, Henfield says it seems the current minister's cries are being overlooked.
It is apparently being ignored, the minister's cries. Apparently being ignored by his colleagues. A lot of people put a lot of hard-earned money into there, and they expect at the end of the day that they're going to be able to benefit as they were promised.
Press Secretary Clint Watson detailing why the Prime Minister has had a change of heart about giving Royal Caribbean International the green light for a multi-million-dollar beach club project on Paradise Island. Megan Shepherd reports.
Prime Minister Philip Davis making a 180 as it relates to supporting Royal Caribbean International's beach club on Paradise Island. Press Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, Clint Watson, telling reporters that what was agreed to by Davis is a different, more scaled-down proposal than what he originally disapproved of when he was in opposition.
The key point is what was presented and approved in principle is a revised proposal, which is smaller in scale and excludes a significant amount of government land. There's about 4 acres of Crown land that is connected to the revised project, and that 4 acres was granted in May of 2021 prior to this administration taking office.
He says it also has more benefits for Bahamians.
That RCL has committed to creating some entrepreneurial opportunities for Bahamians, including the ferry service to be fully operated by Bahamians and owned by Bahamians. These were additional asks that were specifically included that the government wanted to ensure Bahamian stakeholder and ownership in this. Also, Bahamians will be able to invest up to 49% in this project.
According to Watson, the project will be the first to allow government to have an equity stake in an investment.
So the Sovereign Wealth Fund will be developed based on legislation that is being presented in government, that government is introducing. This legislation, as you may be aware, will provide for more responsibility and transparency in management of government's assets. It also ensures more economic return for taxpayers. In other words, what it's really saying is that the government is ensuring that there's more return for the Bahamian people, particularly when there's leasing of any Crown land.
Ground is expected to be broken in the near future. Reporting for Our News, I'm Megan Shepherd.
All right, thanks, Megan. Well, the president and managing director of Atlantis Paradise Island, Audrey Oswald, coming out strongly against the government's decision to move forward with Royal Caribbean's proposed beach club project on Paradise Island. A statement released this evening raised a number of concerns around the potential environmental impact on the surrounding area. Her statement says, "I believe the green light is premature with so many unanswered questions still to be addressed." She says to date, over 50 questions first raised by Atlantis have yet to be answered. Among the issues being raised, the impacts of the Paradise Island coastline, additional boat traffic in the Nassau Harbor, water treatment plants in the area, a lack of adequate emergency services, the impact on downtown merchants with the expected traffic now going to Paradise Island, and the privatization of Paradise Island's last public beach. Oswald is insisting government put on the brakes and examine the project more closely. Now, for a full read of Oswald's objection, head on over to ournews.bs or the Our News Bahamas Facebook page. Well, police are investigating an alleged sexual assault of a woman who was taking an early morning walk. The incident reportedly occurred around 5 a.m. on Wednesday. Police say the victim went for a walk along Prince Charles Drive, heading east towards the beach. While walking near a bushy area, she was grabbed from behind by an unknown man wearing a hooded jacket who told her he had a gun. The suspect sexually assaulted her before running from the scene. Now, police are on the hunt for that suspect. Police have removed 2 guns from the streets of New Providence in 2 separate incidents, including a high-speed car chase. In the first incident, officers from the Anti-Gang and Firearm Investigation Task Force recovered a loaded firearm from the Fox Hill community. Police say shortly after 6 p.m. on Tuesday, officers responded to reports of a man with a gun in an abandoned building at the back of a park on Reeve Street. As officers approached, the man threw the gun and escaped after running from officers. Now, during the second incident, officers attached to the mobile division arrested a 25-year-old man around 11:30 a.m. on Wednesday following a car chase. During that chase, the man threw the gun from his vehicle near Pearldale Road. Police caught up with the suspect, who was the only occupant of a heavily tinted gray Chevy Malibu on Wolf Road. After they searched the car, officers found marijuana. The gun was also recovered. Well, an altercation at the Patrick J. Bethel High School in Abaco attracting concerned parents to the school's campus this morning. In a Facebook Live video, parents could be seen outside the school gate seeking answers about what happened at the Murphytown School. Well, our news reached out to Acting Director of Education, Dominique Russell, for clarification on the situation. She says the incident did not impact classes.
There was a fight, an altercation outside of the school campus. Apparently, a student threw something out of the bus window, and it hit somebody on the side of the road. And so they ran up, and they had a fight outside the school campus. And so what the administrators did is they quickly closed the gate to make sure that it was not brought on campus. They had an assembly with the children, and they went to second period.
Now, she says school's resource officer was present on the campus, and there's protocol in place to investigate these types of matters.
The administration is still conducting the investigation because we need to determine which child threw whatever they threw out of that bus. You know, those kinds of things should not happen, and we have to continue to teach our children how to behave in public on the school bus as well as walking on the streets. And so the investigation will continue. I'm sure they're going to meet with those children who were involved in that altercation.
Beautiful conditions outside the Our News studios this evening. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is in the Weather Center with a look at weather. Greg?
Yeah, thanks, Natalia, and welcome everybody for a quick check on conditions outside our studios. Partly cloudy skies, temperatures are in the 70s, 72 degrees outside our studios. Your winds are out of the northeast at 9 miles per hour. Your feels-like temperature hanging out in the low 70s. Satellite view, patchy clouds moving in off the Atlantic, not producing any rainfall at this hour, but we expect some swells to continue to affect the island, so beaching and boating will become hazardous over the next couple of days. We're asking you, if you have any of those plans, to do exercise extreme caution. That's a quick check on weather conditions around the islands. Stick with us. Look at your extended forecast is still to come.
Still to come on Our News, there are no plans for U.S. pre-clearance to return to Grand Bahama. We've got an exclusive interview from the U.S. Charge d'Affaires and more tonight on the recent Supreme Court hearing over the expulsion of party vice chairman Richard Johnson. The party's chairman now claims the hearing took place without notice and without an attorney representing the party. And later, former Attorney General says getting bills like the National Bill are key to solving some of our gender inequality issues. That's all coming up when Our News returns. A leaked memo to F&M Central Council members from Chairman Dr. Dwayne Sands revealing this recent Supreme Court hearing between Party Vice Chairman Richard Johnson and the leadership of the F&M took place without notice and without the presence of an attorney representing the party. It comes one day after an order restraining the leadership of the F&M from blocking Johnson from attending future council and association meetings. Dr. Sands stating the order restores the previously existing state of affairs pending further deliberation. While in response, Johnson's attorney, Gregory Moss, says the claim that the F&M was unaware is simply untrue. In a press release, Moss said notices of the hearing were served by his members to Khalil Parker Casey on March 7th and March 8th via email and were personally delivered to the chambers of Cedric L. Parker and Co. on March 8th. His press release ended saying neither Parker nor any counsel for the defendants appeared.
This segment of the news is brought to you by H.G. Christie. List your home in Grand Bahama with H.G. Christie. Visit our new office in the Port Lacaya Marketplace. H.G. Christie, celebrating over 100 years of service.
Now turning to the island of Grand Bahama. In an exclusive interview, U.S. Charge d'Affaires Usha Pitts confirming there are no plans in the pipeline for U.S. pre-clearance to return to Grand Bahama, even if a new airport is built, and she's explaining why.
There's only two things that Bahamians ask me for. They say, will you please send us a U.S. ambassador, and will you please reopen a CBP pre-clearance in Grand Bahama? So I appreciate that this is an important issue to Bahamians, but there's of course other issues too. There are budgetary issues. There are just sort of like the quantities of people coming through here are just not high enough yet to make a business case for CBP pre-clearance.
A U.S. pre-clearance section was a part of the Grand Bahama International Airport for decades, dating all the way back to the 1970s. It was a luxury Grand Bahamians valued before departing to the United States. But once Hurricane Dorian ravaged the island's main airport and then slow reconstruction, U.S. pre-clearance was shut down. With plans for a new airport recently announced, many were hoping it would return once construction was complete. The U.S. Charge d'Affaires listing other reasons why there are no plans for its return.
It's more than just, do we want to be here? There are economic considerations, financial considerations, infrastructure considerations.
But Pitts did confirm that the United States has several law enforcement officers working and living in Grand Bahama.
We work very, very closely with the RBDF and the RBPF, and those relationships remain strong. Our offices were destroyed after the hurricane, but we are looking forward to actually signing a lease and reopening a small office here in Grand Bahama in the foreseeable future. So I'm sure that I'll be back for the grand opening when that happens.
It's now time for tonight's Financial Market Minute, brought to you by RF, your local investment bank. This has been your Financial Market Minute. To explore the best performing mutual funds in the Bahamas, visit our website at www.rfgroup.com.
When our news comes back from the break, a former Attorney General reigniting a hot-button issue at an International Women's Day roundtable at the University of the Bahamas last night.
Plus, coming up in sports for tonight, a major injury concern has DeAndre Ayton and the Suns sweating bullets these days. We'll give you details on that, and we'll also tell you how the UB Mingos are faring in local soccer. That's just ahead in sports.
And later, do Bahamians honestly understand the severity of gender-based violence in the country? We have the details when our news returns. now. This is our news. Welcome back. Former Attorney General Allison Maynard Gibson comments on gender equality reigniting a hot-button topic at an International Women's Day roundtable hosted at the University of the Bahamas last night. Our Marlena Leonard was there and filed this report.
In the meantime, there are people with real life problems that we need to deal with. Right. So yes, let's do both.
That's former Attorney General Allison Maynard Gibson, KC, addressing whether or not constitutional changes or legislative changes should be prioritized when it comes to women's issues. Maynard Gibson, who was at the forefront of the 2016 gender referendum, says she's disappointed on how it all turned out.
This is where, and I'm a good Anglican, but the church has to step up to the plate and accept this responsibility, because people were able to throw in all kinds of things that were irrelevant to get people distracted from what was the issue at hand. And when I said to people, well, why did you vote against your niece being able to have her child become a Bahamian? I didn't do that.
Maynard Gibson says getting bills like the Nationality Bill 2022 passed are key in solving the issue in the interim.
I wouldn't wait for the constitutional referendum. There's a bill right now in Parliament. Let's get that act passed. Let's get the act passed. So at least Shanty could register her child as a Bahamian, matter of right. And not just Shanty, everybody else too. And not just your child. Why should a Bahamian man's wife, what qualifications he has where his wife could automatically become a Bahamian and your husband can't?
Panelist Diasanti Small echoes Maynard Gibson's frustration of the 2016 gender equality referendum. Many of the panelists referring to the Bahamian women's suffrage movement. Small says their laser-sharp focus on an issue is a strength we need to return to.
Have those conversations, but keep that conversation consistent. We can't keep changing the agenda and then confused, because when we do get an opportunity to speak or to carry something to Parliament, the thing's so long. We trying to get everything done. We have to say these are the most critical areas. These are the things that are tangible. These are the low-hanging fruit even that we can achieve in the next year, next 3 years, 5 years that we want to see.
Reporting for Our News, I'm Marlena Leonard.
All right, thanks, Marlena. Well, DeAndre Ayton and the Suns quieting the Thunder despite the loss of a key player. Meanwhile, the UB Mingos ride a hat trick to victory in local soccer. Here's Marcellus Hall with a check on sports.
All right, thanks, Natalia. Welcome to our sports, everybody. I'm Marcellus Hall. Well, we know the Phoenix Suns were considered to be one of the favorites to make it out of the NBA Western Conference and perhaps even vie for a title. And this came on the heels of their trade for megastar Kevin Durant. Well, just not so fast, because Kevin Durant, suffering an injury just prior to the game last night, could be out for the foreseeable future. That does not bode well. They still have to play the game. DeAndre Ayton taking to the floor as he and the Suns look to pick up a win without their top player. Let's take a look and see how it went down. DeAndre Ayton, Phoenix Suns at home taking on the OKC Thunder. It was supposed to be the debut of newly acquired Kevin Durant. However, in the warm session, Durant suffering an ankle injury. More on that in a second, but the Suns would have to play without him throughout this contest. Wouldn't matter because Devin Booker, he would go off. 44 points for him, and the Suns, they roll to an easy victory. 132-101 ends up being your final score. As for our guy DeAndre Ayton, he played a pretty solid game. Taking a look at how he played 24 minutes, had 12 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists. They didn't need him again. They were blowing the other team out, so didn't have to play some heavy minutes here. Hopefully that trend continues, because they got the word that Kevin Durant could be out for quite a while now with what they consider what is called a grade 2 sprain of that ankle. Hopefully it does not hamper him too much moving forward. On to some other news now, this time coming in from the University of the Bahamas. They have now their men's soccer team, they've been doing pretty good. Marlon Barnes showed up big for his squad against Future Stars FC in Bahamas Football Association action. This over at the Roscoe A.L. Davies Field. Barnes was the hat-trick hero for the Mingos. He scored 3 goals. The team wins 3-1 to stay in second place overall, total of 31 points. They're 10-3-1 so far in the year. He started his hat-trick campaign in the first half of the match, scoring on a push-kick penalty shot in the right side of the goal. That came in the 31st minute to put the team up 1-0 again. They would never look back, as again he would score another penalty kick in the 63rd minute and then connected again on a kick deep into the game in the 65th minute. All they would need, and again they get the 3-1 win. And that's indeed your look at sports here on this Thursday. I'm Marcellus Hall. Back to you, Italia.
Still ahead on our news tonight, International Women's Day providing the perfect opportunity to discuss the many issues affecting women. Hear what is being said about tackling gender-based violence. That's all coming up when Our News returns.
Welcome back to Our News. Sunny skies in the nation's capital today. Meteorologist Greg Thompson is back with your extended weather forecast.
Yeah, thanks again, Natalia, and welcome back, everybody, for our final check of weather. Ridge of high pressure starting to dominate our weather, and it's been shifting slowly towards the east. That's after a frontal boundary that passed through us, now hanging out across Hispaniola. Patchy clouds moving in out of the Atlantic across the area, so we could see some partly cloudy skies tonight through tomorrow, but most of the clouds not producing any rainfall at this time. Big low pressure system well out in the open Atlantic, generating some very large swells, so beaching and boating will become a challenge for you for the next several days, so we're asking you beachgoers and you boaters to exercise extreme caution. Another frontal boundary with a system taking shape across the central portions of the United States expected to get here by the weekend. Taking a look at our future forecast, nothing happening out there, some patchy clouds as well as some isolated showers, but moisture associated with that frontal boundary will be moving into our area by, as I said, Saturday, so we're looking for some isolated showers across the northwest Bahamas. Boating forecast for the northwest Bahamas tonight through tomorrow. Small craft advisory in place for you guys. The winds will be east to southeast at 10 to 15 knots. Seas running 2 to 4 feet near shore, but they will be up to 9 feet offshore in some moderate north easterly swells. Your high tide will be at 9:12 tonight. Similar conditions for the central and southeast Bahamas. Small craft advisory down there as well, but your winds more northeast to east at 10 to 15 knots. Seas 2 to 4 feet near shore, but up to 10 feet offshore in northeasterly swells. Here's a look now at your national forecast. In your extended forecast, we'll keep some isolated clouds and showers in the forecast through Friday. Another front expected on Saturday, but some showers in the forecast. But once that front gets out of here, temperatures will be back near the 80-degree mark, and then even one more front actually getting in here sometime Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. That's a look at our weather. Make it a safe night, everybody.
Thanks, Greg. Well, brilliant women from all walks of life sat down to talk about women's issues and the way forward at an International Women's Day roundtable hosted by the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority last night at the American Corner at the University of the Bahamas. One of the panelists, president of the Bahamas National Chapter of Caribbean Women in Leadership, Charlene Paul, stressed that she fears Bahamians do not understand the severity of gender-based violence in the country.
5 of our member states indicated that 1 in 2 women have experienced or will experience violence, and by an intimate partner. And if you think that is normal, average, and happening around the world, no. The average rate of rape, violence against women around the world is 15 in 100,000. Okay? 3 of the top 10 countries are in the Caribbean.
All right, and with that, we thank you for joining us for our news tonight. On behalf of the entire team, I'm Natalia Hall. We'll see you tomorrow night. Have a great evening.